building on the Jack Mansfield property. I know a committee did look at it.
Yeah, we met on the 13th of April, and we would like to recommend the approval of the conditional use permit for the building.
Make a motion.
I will make a motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the conditional use permit.
Well, I have an opportunity to speak.
Yeah. Go ahead. And Bob did sign up to speak on this.
I think there's one of these for everybody. I should identify myself. Everybody knows I'm Bob Sevenker, along with my wife Mary, and we live at 521 South 23rd, which is directly across from the main entrance to the property. I'm a little disappointed, I guess, in one respect, that not one contact was initiated by any of you towards any of the neighbors that live around this property. I have to commend, I think, that the Planning Commission, at the time they were involved, two of their members did contact us when originally the plan was to change it from residential back to agriculture. And for some reason, that was changed to the conditional use. I'll just briefly go over, I guess, a few things that I'd written down. And, you know, one of the reasons, I guess, that I really didn't understand why the council would consider approving this was that, you know, your current zoning regulations you just adopted in 2003, and you designated the whole area as residential. And now you're considering, I guess, a conditional use that would clearly promote the expansion of an agriculture operation. In your current zoning regulations under section 410-2, permitted uses and structures, number 7 states that pasturing of livestock, again, pasturing of livestock in accordance with city ordinance is permitted, but excluding any type of livestock in buildings or pens, and excluding any buildings for agricultural equipment storage or other buildings which supports agriculture operations on the premises. So as I looked into this a little bit, I was told that, you know, because this property was grandfathered in, it would be grandfathered into previous regulations, and no one's been able to tell me what those previous regulations are. You know, I somewhat agree that when the zoning is changed, that the existing operation could possibly be grandfathered in, but I don't think the expansion of a non-conforming use should fall under the grandfather clause, and using grandfathering as a reason. Then I was told that under section 410-4, and this all comes out of your zoning regulations, conditional uses and structures, that number 8 would apply. Number 8 states that agriculture buildings may be allowed as a conditional use. However, later on under 410-4, it also states that the provisions of Article 7, conditional uses must be met before any agriculture building may be allowed. In other words, they're saying, yes, it could be, but all these conditions should be met before it is allowed. Article 7, conditional uses, section 73. I don't know how much you've looked at these zoning regulations, and we have them on the county level. Obviously, you have them here, and it's hard to sort through everything, but it does state in section 703-03, the City Council, in considering an application for conditional use, may consider the most appropriate use of the land included in the application. Well, you determined in 2003 the most appropriate use was residential. You know, you zoned it residential, and you adopted the rules. The city may also stipulate and require compliance with such conditions and restrictions that it deems appropriate to promote the land in the application, the conservation and stabilization of the value of real property, the adequacy of open space, the concentration of population, congestion of streets, promotion of public health, safety, and welfare. And please tell me how the confined feeding of over 20 horses And what it attracts, the smell, the flies, the manure runoff, that eventually runs into a city storm sewer that eventually discharges in Johnson Field, how does that promote the public health, safety, and welfare? You know, we've lived across the street from this property for over 30 years, and I think there's always been a presence of some horses there. And, you know, when there are a few horses are out there pasturing, you know, there was never any problem. But until recent years, there's never been that concentration in confined feeding that exists there today. You know, what would this confined feeding from, you know, keep it from expanding and moving directly across from the houses on the 23rd Street and be within 100 foot of the front door? And in fact, just in a few days, I think some of the livestock, or maybe approximately 8, have been moved to that location. You know, until recent years, there's never been the number of buildings moved in. Maybe well, whatever. And there's never been a number of buildings moved in and pieces of farm equipment and trailers scattered on the property. You know, there's other concerns, I guess, that I personally have, but, you know, I'm trying to keep this as brief as possible. And believe me, sitting on the county board for over 16 years, you know, I know that the boards have to make difficult decisions that may affect people and people adversely. I believe that by approving this conditional use and allowing this agricultural operation to expand, more properties and individuals will be adversely affected, and only one individual will benefit. You know, please take the time to further study and research the matter more thoroughly. You know, contact the neighbors. I didn't go door to door at all up 23rd Street. I didn't talk to anybody on there. I did visit with a couple property owners on the east side here that are closer proximity to the horses than I am. Both of them are opposed to it. Both of them chose not to come for whatever reasons. And I'm not going to speak for them, but I think that you should. I mean, we count on you as the board to represent us. And I really feel like that you should talk to your constituents. Some of them maybe you already have, I don't know. None of you contacted me. I talked to Neil and I called Jade, and that's the only ones I've talked to about it. But nobody initiated any contact to talk about it. You know, I'd even suggest, I tried to get a hold of Orville Stair today, and I believe he's the one that sat down and that made up the regulations or helped compose the regulations for the county and also the city. You know, I couldn't get a hold of him, but I really think that he should be talked to. I keep hearing, well, we've got all these gray areas here that's kind of vague. We don't really know what. Well, sit down and talk to him. And, you know, the gray areas, let's get them straightened out. You know, I believe, you know, the proposed that the building is, I don't even know the exact location of it, but I think it's a 40 by 60 building with 16-foot sidewalls. You know, it's not a residential structure. It's clearly not a residential structure. You know, we've already had a building going up right in a residential area that they said, well, it complies with all the setbacks and everything is okay. But section 410-01 in your regulation states that building height and building mass should be compatible to the neighborhood. And that's what it says. Building height and building mass should be compatible to the neighborhood. And it isn't. You know, and also, we're concerned about how many animal units really can be on the property or allowed on the property. Nobody's ever able to tell me that. You know, if we had some of these answers, you know, I'm not saying we'd be totally opposed to anything like this, but there's answers out there that we don't have. And I haven't been able to get them. You know, I'd personally like to see the number reduced. And this, in turn, maybe would, you know, slow down, I guess, the agriculture activities that go in and out of there every day. But I'm speaking here on behalf of Mary and myself. I'm not speaking on behalf of anybody else. And like I say, I didn't go door to door. I didn't campaign, you know, against this. This is our feeling strictly. I'm just asking you to take the time. I think Orville Stair would be a good one to talk to. I've also heard that this is outside the city limits. So yes, the zoning, city zoning applies to it, but yet it's up to the county to enforce it, which I don't agree with. I think it's the city's responsibility, but I don't know positively. I think these things should all be worked out before we proceed with any more. That's it. I appreciate your time and thank you for your consideration.
More discussion from the council? I personally myself look at it and I do agree somewhat, you know, with Bob. It's a tough call. I think there's other options that we could look at, you know, as a council. You know, it is a conditional use, and instead of just, you know, passing it the way it is, at the very least, you know, I would like to see some conditions on it. But You know, and I would even maybe go down the path of bringing back